an answer. Maybe you can. But the same question applies. If Jesus is not a son in any real normative way, meaning there's no sexual union, there's no process, the temporal process of giving birth, being pregnant, then how is he a son in any meaningful way?
So in what real way is Jesus said to be the son of God the Father? So the Orthodox Muslim was running a live stream, and he was going around asking Christians who come up to his live stream this very question. So this is a question about meaning, right? Fundamentally, it's a question about meaning. So let's break down 3 ways in which we can use terms or predicates. First is univocal sense. When something has a univocal sense, it's used in the exact same way, right? When I say John is a human being and Juju is a human being, right? Human being there is being used in the same way, univocal, right? Meaning one sense. Then there's equivocal senses, meaning completely distinct, right? I can say John as my friend, and I might use the same term John to pick out a restaurant, right? But it's the same term, but the term is used in totally distinct ways with no relation, no similarity bearing one another in its meaning. The third, and the one that we're going to focus on here, is analogical. Now, what is analogical? As you can see, the root word there is by analogy, right? So we're going to be using a predicate which draws a parallel between 2 things and produces a term that produces a similarity between those 2 things. I'll give you an example. If I say this man is healthy, I am saying that this man has health, right? As a sort of property of his body. Now, if I say this food is healthy, right? It's not the exact same in the sense that it's not univocal in sense, but it's also not equivocal. It's also not completely unrelated. There's a large similarity holding the 2 together, because when I say the food is healthy, I'm not saying the food has health in itself. I'm saying the food has the power to produce health in a body, right? So when I say, the Orthodox Muslim is healthy versus the food is healthy, health is drawn through parallels, through analogy, but it's not univocal. It's not the exact same sense, but it's also not equivocal. It's not completely unrelated in sense. But this is the important part. Just because we say it's analogical, it doesn't mean it's not real, right? Because when I say this food is healthy, there is a reality to what foods are and are not healthy. When I say this human being is healthy, there is a reality to, who is and who is not healthy, right? Some people have diabetes, some people don't have diabetes. Some people are overweight, some people are at the healthy weight, right? Just like food, some foods are healthy, other foods, cause cancer in you, and so they produce, unhealthy results. Now, this is the core that you have to understand before we really get into what he's asking here.
In what real meaningful way, then, is Jesus the real Son of God, devoid of a
So the Orthodox Muslim says that because it's not used in a normative way, in what sense is Jesus a son to the Father? Well, it is used in some of the normative ways, but it's not used in all of them, and that's why it's not univocal. Right? For example, the Son inherits what the Father has, just like in the Old Testament, normatively, it is the firstborn son who inherits all of that which the Father owns and has, right? And in like manner there, the Son inherits all of creation as the Son has. Another one, the Son is said to be a visible image, the perfect visible image of the invisible God. In like manner, when a father has a son, biologically speaking, in creation, right, the son almost clearly resembles a lot of the time the Father. A lot of people say, well, he looks just like you. He's an image of you. The scripture speaks as Jesus as a visible image of the invisible God. Also, the Son is sent into the world by the Father. Just like when you have a biological son, at some point you send them into the world, right? And then in a certain way, the son speaks for the Father in a lot of ways, in ways where if the son is a image of the Father, they carry a lot of the same values as the Father. In a way, they're literally speaking the Father's values into the world without the Father physically being there, but the Father is in a way present in their Son. In the same way, Jesus says, the only way to get to the Father is through him. Jesus, as eternally begotten, meaning having the special relationship to the Father of being eternally generated, coming forth from the Father, just as in a biological sense, a son comes forth from the Father biologically. But the analogy between there is the coming forth. So you have an inheritance, you have an image, you have a mission, all of which are parallels, right? Likenesses between the two, analogy, such that we can, in a real, meaningful way, say that the Son is a son, or Jesus is the Son in reference to God the Father.
Thank you.
Well, you want to know what I think, my humble opinion, Catholic girl. I think you'll never be able to answer this question, nor anybody you know, not your priest, not the church fathers, not Jesus Christ himself can answer this question for you.
Now, the only way to object to this, since we've proven that analogical predication does not merely reduce to metaphor in a figurative sense, it can be real, as health is real, yet health is analogical. They may object to analogical predication itself as a legitimate form of predication or meaning. But can they do that? Well, let's look at their own tradition, which seems to use it. Muslims will say Allah has a hand, but the hand is not like a created creature's hand, a human hand, right? Matter of fact, they go as far as to say that it's not like a hand in any creaturely sense, right? But yet they say that it is real. It is a real hand. So it's not univocal, right? Otherwise, they would have to admit that God's hand is exactly the same in meaning to when we use hand of creatures, and they deny that. And it's not equivocal, meaning completely distinct senses, or else it would just be absolutely meaningless, because when we ask, well, what does it mean for God to have a hand? They would answer, well, it's something like, right, or greater than a human hand, which means that they're still saying it's intelligible to some degree. They don't want to say it's absolute nonsense, right? Otherwise, they'd be contradicting the Quran where it says that it's clear, right? It's extremely clear. So they don't want to say it is equivocal, right? Two just fundamentally distinct meanings. They want to say that it is greater than a human hand, but a lot of them try to reduce it to something like power or something. So it's analogical, right? They're drawing a likeness, even if it's a very weak one, they're drawing a likeness between that. Now, some may object, if you're a Muslim watching this, you may think, well, no, we take the hand to mean power. Well, does that save this? No, because they want to say there's nothing like Allah unto creation, meaning that power is not univocal either. So you can't retreat into power, because God's power is not the same as created creatures' power. So that means you've erased it being univocal. It cannot be univocal. Now, is it equivocal? It cannot be equivocal either, or else you would have two fundamentally distinct meanings, meaning that when you give the example of power like a hand grabs something, that means that you can't give that example anymore, because that draws a likeness. But equivocal meanings, terms that are equivocal, are completely distinct in meaning. So what you're trying to do there is draw an analogy, right? When someone says, well, by hand, we mean something like power or whatnot, like someone grabs something in a hand, and God's power is like that, but greater, beyond imagination. They're still drawing a likeness between God and creation. And so you cannot deny that this is a legitimate form of meaning, predication, as a Muslim, without concluding that everything you say of God is meaningless.